Welcome, everybody. Thank you for braving this wet weather to be here this afternoon to hear our distinguished visitor from Southeast Asia, Mr. Youk Chhang, talk to the theme of connecting the broken pieces after the Cambodian genocide, legacy as memory of a nation. Mr. Youk Chhang was selected by UCLA and UC Berkeley as our distinguished visitor, which is a program we run every 2 years. And having been one of Time's top 100 people who shaped our world, we felt not only should he be Time Man of the Year, but UCLA, UC Berkeley Man of the 2 years, because we only do this every 2 years, and in fact of the decade, because this is the first time this decade that we have had a distinguished visitor from Cambodia. And Youk Chhang appealed to faculty here at Berkeley and at UCLA, not only because of our wide Cambodia coverage. I'm delighted to have Professor Kataria here in the audience, who is a pioneer of Cambodia studies on this campus. Also, Mr. Frank Smith, who is a teacher of Khmer, who will be joining us shortly, because he's busy with his class right now. And has been really promoting Khmer language studies on this campus. We've also got at UCLA Patrick Uverleen, the professor of sociology, who's been doing extensive fieldwork in Cambodia on demography. In the Department of Rhetoric, we have David Cohen of the War Crimes Center, who sadly could not be here today as he is sort of blockaded in Europe by volcanic ash fallout. And some superb programs with the Human Rights Center led by Eric Stover and others, which have been mobilizing faculty and researchers to track and document perspectives among the populace towards the Khmer Rouge Tribunal, as well as in the Faculty of Law, where very interesting projects are being run. Among them, a project by students currently who are looking at putting together a defense for Kampuchea Crown, Khmer Crown victims and survivors of families who were lost and family members who were lost in the Khmer Rouge period. Youk Chhang is a very well-known name in Cambodia studies, but also in the field of international law, justice, reconciliation processes. And while anyone who's familiar with Cambodia will be very much aware of the extraordinary presence there of a vast array, I think it's, did you say 3,000 NGOs, non-governmental organizations in Cambodia who have really flourished in interesting ways since the 1980s, when the People's Republic of Kampuchea was not recognized and was isolated by numerous Western governments. And then from this sort of massive influx of development aid through rehabilitation efforts in the 1990s. So there are a plethora of NGOs there. Not all of those NGOs have been successful in achieving sustainability and in training people from the grassroots up and really developing skills, key skills in Cambodian constituencies and Cambodian communities. And I consider the Documentation Center of Cambodia, that founded on the initiative of Mr. Youk Chhang, to be a really superb template of what can be achieved on I shouldn't say a minimal budget, because the funds that have been attracted have been from a variety of donors and have been channeled into some wonderful projects. But rather, I should say that the very nice sort of low profile and the austerity, let me use the word austerity, of Youk Chhang's very elegant offices and his whole outfit really, to me, are a model of what non-governmental organizations can and should achieve and how they can and should operate in Cambodia. Youk Chhang, himself a survivor of the Khmer Rouge, formerly was here in the US as a refugee in the early 90s, returned to Cambodia and has remained there in Cambodia. And has interpreted the mandate of the Documentation Center of Cambodia in a very creative way, firstly training scores, hundreds, I presume, over the time that you've been doing this at Youk, of Cambodian researchers and ethnographers who've been documenting multiple aspects and facets of the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia and the experience and recollections of survivors. But exploring the full dimensions of that experience obviously includes listening to, for any project that is looking towards reconciliation, also incorporating perpetrators and trying to come to an understanding of the motivations that led to the atrocities, as well as the sheer politics and that overall sort of veneer of outside real politics and international involvement. So among the many projects that the DC CAM has initiated are publications, exhibitions, outreach, films. Youk has been part of an extraordinary effort to enhance public knowledge in high schools, in school curriculum of Khmer Rouge regime and history. And while that might seem odd to us, because those of us here who know about Cambodia obviously have a fairly clear understanding of the Khmer Rouge regime, the factors and politics involved, precisely because it is such a political and sensitive piece of history, and because members of the current leadership also have connections with that past history. The way in which history has been taught in Cambodia has often been truncated to archaeology, the wonders of Angkor, and then sort of fast forwarded. And it's been heavily politicized. Youk Chhang has overseen the development of curriculum for grades 9 to 12 for high schools in Cambodia, and has recently released and produced guidebooks in Khmer and in English for use by high school teachers. And that's really, all that I want to say. I really want Youk Chhang to take the floor and to talk to you about his theme, Connecting the Broken Pieces After the Cambodian Genocide, Legacy as Memory of a Nation. And just to say that we have, as an example of one of the exhibitions, there is a variety of images there, and Youk will include, I think, reference to those images and why and how he has put these together to illuminate the themes of the Khmer Rouge period and the aftermath of that process and those trials and the actual trial in Phnom Penh, the verdict for Duke, which will be announced in I think it's the third week of June, is it? Third week of June, yes. Okay, well, a very big welcome for Mr. Youk Chhang. Thank you.
I guess maybe we just should go to a Q&A. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I will give a very brief presentation so that we can go to a Q&A, so it's perhaps much easier, so you will get what you want to hear. She said most of what did I want to say is already, actually. I give you a little bit of my view about Cambodia, and then I talk a little bit about tribunals and genocide education with parallel with our objective of the center called Memory and Justice. And then I will speak a little bit about mistakes. She said all good things about us, but I can guarantee you there's a long list of mistakes that we made, and also challenges to establish such an institution in the post-conflict society. Then I will address a little bit about the future, where we go next after the tribunal is over. And then I will conclude with the definition of success of the center that so far has been perhaps seen by others as a success NGO in Cambodia. To me, Cambodia is still a damaged and divided society. You drop a glass on the floor, it's broken. That's what it is. As a nation, as an individual, it's a broken society with broken people. After 30 years, all these pieces were washed away by floods, will disappear. And now you come back to bring all these pieces together and put it back together. That's Cambodia's look like to me. There are 5 million survivors that are still around this day, aged between 45 above. And then you have 9 million who were born after the genocide in '79. So it's a huge population. They have done so much to this far. I mean, they were not just sitting there expecting the tribunal to be established. If you go back a little bit to 1979, I mean, they used 3 major steps to come to this far. They used militaries, the invasion in '79. They started their own tribunals right after the collapse of the Khmer Rouge. There was 1.1 million survivors signed a petition in 1982 asking the UN to set up a tribunal. And the petition never left the country, as you'll have that in my office today. The excavation of 20,000 mass graves nationwide, with many reasons, and each of the mass graves, by definition, it consists of more than 100 to 1,000 bodies per mass grave. They have a defection policy. I mean, during the '80s, perhaps you were there. They used a lot of Cambodian music because there's only one radio frequency at that time. We used the buffalo horns. You know, when you go hunting the elephant, when you blow that horn, then the elephant would cry. You hunted the elephant, and every evenings that they would use the wife or relative of the Khmer Rouge who fled, who joined the other side to come home. So while they're fighting with the Khmer Rouge, also they try to defect the Khmer Rouge as well. They have built memorial across the country where they store skull. Each of the grave sites usually located near the prison site. There's 196 prisons across the country. So stupa were built nationwide. Each of the provinces has one stupa with full of skulls in it. They come together every May 20th to be angry, to be upset, to cry, to condemn the Khmer Rouge, and they still do it today on May 20th. Then they have election, you know, and now we have a tribunal. So when you look back in the last 30 years, that people of Cambodia, and disregard of the color of the government at that time, they have done so much to COVID genocide. They have talked so much. And some of them now don't want to speak any longer because they've been talking too much. There's no more tear when they see skull this day, no more tear to drop. But why the tribunal is so important? You know, people are divided in Cambodia because we're so broken. I give you one example from my own family, how a family is being so divided on how justice is being done. I have a sister who aged about 25 at that time, has 3 children, and were evacuated to Posat province near the central of the country. And my brother-in-law stole a cucumber and was caught by the village chief. So he was beat up severely in front of the villager. This is how you teach you a lesson. If you steal, then we beat you up. And he got so very upset at that night, so very upset, and then he died that night. He died because he was beat up severely and was so upset, so he died. So after he died that night, my sister got stomach upset, and then she was accused by the village chief of eating stolen cucumber. So to prove that she did not eat the cucumber that was stolen by my brother-in-law, they took her to the hospital and cut her stomach open, and she died. So when she died, one of my nieces, who the youngest one, about one years old, no breastfeeding. So he cried and then he died. He got exhaustion, he died of exhaustion. The second one, the same thing. She looking for her parent and no one comfort her. So she cried and cried and there's no food to eat. So she died. But one left, her name is TV. TV, she's now 36 years old, married, and has 3 children living in Maryland, in America. She cried so much, so I decided to lie to her to make up a story. So we told her that the parent and her brother and sister pretended to die. Actually, they went to heaven, and they would come back to pick her up. So we gave her a coconut shell where you can drink water. In Cambodia, you use coconut shell to drink water. And we told her that this is left behind by your parent. Drink water and go to sleep. because no food to eat, so you drink water and fill your stomach, so she go to sleep. And she stopped crying and she believed us. Today's, every Christmas, her three kids would ask her for her parent, and she would tell the kid to email me in Cambodia to tell to the children about her parent. And I don't want to lie to her kid the way I lied to her 30 years ago. But my niece refused to believe a new story. She wanted me to tell the kid the same story I told her 30 years ago. And the coconut shell that we gave her, she now keeps in the safety box in the Bank of Maryland. And she refused to go to Cambodia. And she said, "Uncle, you worked so hard for a tribunal, what for? Would it bring back my parents? Would it bring back what we have lost? And why should I go back to Cambodia? It's a country of, it's a broken nation. It's a country full of illusion and fakes, and nothing was truth in Cambodia." So I have no support from my niece by working all this year for a tribunal, and she never wanted to hear anything about tribunal, and she thinks that the tribunal is a waste of time and resources. There's no point. Any form of punishment would not be fair, so there's no point to work for a tribunal. In '79, after the Khmer Rouge collapse, the village chief who was responsible for the death of my sister rode a bicycle 400 kilometers from Battambang with banana, lotus flowers, chickens, fish, dry fish, and found my mother and asked for forgiveness for what he did to my sister. My mother, she's a Buddhist-like person, so she forgave him. And she believed that maybe she had done something wrong in the past life. That's why this life, she had to suffer and do this such a suffering. She lost all her parents, all her brother and sister, including also my sister. So she forgave the village chief, who also tortured me, who put me in prison, who also responsible for the death of my sister. But I disagree with my mother. I disagree with her for 25 years. During the Khmer Rouge time, one of my other sisters is pregnant, and she doesn't have food to eat for several weeks, for several months. So I decided to went out to the field, pick up some mushrooms, the water grass and other things that can eatable, and to feed my sister. And it was caught by the prison guard. And those things as such is a crime. You know, if I can go back to 30 years ago, I would tell Youk Chhang then not to steal, because I stole all this mushroom from the field, which supposed to belong to the Angkar. And we were told not to touch anything that grow, even though it's in your backyard. But I did it because I love my sister. I want to give her something to eat. So I was caught and beat up by 4 prison guards, and in front of my mother. And she was there. So I was angry at both the prison guard and my own mother for 25 years. I didn't realize that crying was a crime. Had she have cried and showed sympathy toward me, perhaps we both would have been dead. So she held back the tear and allowed me to be upset with her for 25 years. And now, after all this anger that I have, she forgave the village chief who was responsible for the death of my sister and tortured me. You know, so I couldn't find a word to say, how dare you do this thing to your own son, you know? So my mother and I and my niece are divided on how justice is being done for my sister. My mother has moved on for 30 years. She does not need a tribunal. At one point that Christian and Anman Po came to Cambodia and she wanted to talk to my mother. She's 84. I said, please don't bother her, you know, because she's very old. But she says she's interested to see what she has to say. So they put her inside my office and let me outside, so I listened to her conversation on the earphone. And then through the interpreter, Christian and Anman Po asked my mother, are you happy that your son worked so hard, now you have a tribunal? I guess she was expecting my mother to say yes. But instead, she said, I'm happy that he's safe. So she asked again the same question, and my mother answered the same thing. I said, don't you understand? I'm happy that he's safe. So with all this year that I thought that working toward the tribunals would encourage my mother to look into the future, to see that I'm grow older, stronger, and independent. She doesn't care about tribunal. So I was wrong again to think that by doing this to make her happy. So I came to this work not because I care for humanity, it's not because that I care for the world. I do it for my mother. And in the end of the day the tribunal was established, she doesn't even care about the tribunal, you know? So this is in a family. And through all this research, I decided to go back to the village where I used to live in Battambang. And I found a village chief who tortured me. And I found the parent of the prison guard who tortured me as well. When we first met, I allowed my staff to conduct the interview. I keep an emotional distance, you know, to be functioning as a professional researcher. So my staff began to interview the village chief. Not a single word that he lied about what happened, not a word. And I was looking for something that he would lie so that I would pick on him. I would say, look, see, I told you, you bad, you know? But not a word that he lied. So in the end of the interview, I decided to ask him a question. I'm not supposed to ask a question to the possible witness for the tribunal, but I broke the rule, so I asked him a question. I said, don't you remember me? I live here. And he said, who are you? I said, you know, I live here. You torture me. You put me in prison. He didn't remember me. I'm waiting for a moment that he would say he remembers, so I would throw back at him what he did to me. But he was sincerely did not remember me. And he's just a skinny man now with 2 skinny buffalo, living a very poor, barely have food to eat. I can just take him right now. But what difference does it make? Had I done that, would it make my mother happy? Would it make me feel better? So the way through the course of research for more than 10 years, I have changed from taking revenge and look for a way to be reconciled. In his case, I don't forgive him because he never asked for forgiveness for me, because he doesn't know me. And how dare I to forgive him? He doesn't even know who I am. But since the day that we have met, he no longer part of me. So to be reconciled is to be a part, in my case. He no longer part of my life. And I never forgive him. And he never seeks forgiveness. And perhaps this is what we call reconciliation in Cambodia. So this is to demonstrate that Cambodia is a broken society, a broken individual. When you go to Cambodia, people put into a nice clothes, nice shoes. I dressed up a little bit today for your talk, for example, because very distinguished. You know, so don't believe her. I mean, I'm just Youk Chhang. But emotionally, we're broken. You know, and I wonder what my mother thinking every day. Because when we met, we never spoke, we never talked. We don't know what to talk about. At one time, I remember when I first returned to Cambodia for the UN election, 1992, she was excited to see me back to the country for the first time. And she began a story, oh, you know, in Cambodia, people always talk about the Khmer Rouge time all the time. Oh, remember what at one point that you stolen cucumber and you were put in prison. And suddenly the whole house was silent because it brought shame to the family. Even though I have reason to steal food from my sister, it brings shame to the family. A lot of parents today in America who have grown children who grew up in the country find it difficult to tell the children, how do we survive? We steal, we cheat, we point finger to others. So the children never have a complete understanding of what happened because it's so difficult, because it's immoral. If I were to tell my children that I survived because I steal, it doesn't make any sense, you know, to the kids who were born after the Khmer Rouge time. So, you know, it's such a broken nation, and you have 5 million population who still think that people are divided not because they don't care for justice, not that the tribunal is not important, because they care so much for the future. Because it becomes our history, it becomes my history. So everyone wants the tribunal at their own term. The government, the prime minister, myself, my mothers, my niece, and many people. People who were refugees and end up in America, people who were returned after the election, people who were in the country, people who live in Paris, people who live in Australia. You know, why we all around here, all these Cambodians? Because genocide took place in Cambodia. That's why we're everywhere in the world. And now we're returning home. And each of us have a story. So we want the trial at our own term. That's why we're so divided. It's a divided society. Not that because we don't care, not that because we disagree, because we care so much for the future. That's why we divided. So the tribunal is important in that sense. It's something that for us to bring the circle to an end, like in case of my mother, to bring a closure. And it might not please everybody, because the loss, the suffering is too much, and nothing that can ever be enough. But at least something that we can look back, that we can use to serve with the past and move on with our life. And it takes generation. It takes, in some cases, we have to be realistic that reconciliation is impossible. We cannot just say that, well, let's have truth commission, that people talk together, let face to face. Cambodian more body language when it comes to forgiveness. They don't speak directly, but you have to be there to observe. We interview over 10,000 killers in the past 10 years. But Cambodian if you look at all truth commissions, it's happening only in a Christian country, which is a lot of to do with the Bible, with the God and forgiveness and so forth. Cambodia is a Buddhist country, so it's a different way of coping or forgiving in the case of genocide. So I support the tribunal in a sense that provide all the evidence, possible evidence to the tribunal. The center have collected over 1 million documents, have documented over 20,000 mass graves, prisons, memorial sites, have interviewed over 10,000 perpetrators and victims, have collected over 600,000 photographs and documentary film. And we don't analyze any data because our interest is nothing but the whole truth. So from beginning of the establishment of the tribunal, of the center, we wanted so much of a tribunal because we believe that this is important for the nation. So with the tribunal, we work with all units. We work with prosecutor, with investigating judge, with defense counsels, with court management, and we provide all these resources to all sides so that the truth can be prevailed, so that victim can have a role, can have a say in the process itself. In regard to the reconciliation, as I said, that in some cases we have to understand that it's impossible. I give you one example of 2 women that I met. One is Islam. We don't have asked for apology, asked for forgiveness. He apologized, and I asked her for her reaction. She said that, don't have was responsible for 14,000 prisoners at S21. If what he did can be forgiven by Allah, she would want to kill Doi and ask Allah to forgive her instead. Makes sense, huh? It makes good sense. She's very intelligent. She said, look, if Allah would forgive him for killing 14,000 prisoners, I would kill him and I would seek for forgiveness. I kill anyone, So with all this deep root of religion, people keep it aside. Perhaps God next. It's personal. It's first. Personal revenge is first. There's a nun that who lost her husband, and still a photograph she left was lying, and all her children, and she's now alone at the age of 86 years old, living by herself. She doesn't care if she was allowed to beat up Doi in front of the public eye. She's a nun, She said she's not afraid to do such a things at all, and she's a nun. You see, this is the frustration. I don't think that both of them want to kill Doi. I don't think these 2 gentle, lovely women would go then and take the knife and kill Doi today. But to show the expression, to show the difficulty to cope, and that's, it's come to this kind of statement that they make, is to kill somebody, to chop Ieng Sri into 1.7 million pieces, and each of get a piece of him, so that even, stuff like to hang them and cut them with a piece of knife, so all of us get a cut, then it would be fair. So those are statements made by the victim who feel so frustrated with the process of the tribunal. So reconciliation, at the center we work with both groups. We work with the 5 million who were direct victim. We also work for their children. There's 9 million young population who are the children of either victim or perpetrator today. There's 9 million of them under the age of 25. And many of them either belong to one side or the other. So the justice issue now been taken care by the tribunal, and now come to the issue of reconciliation. And we divide into two main projects. One is dealing with cultural education as a way in which to educate the young population so that they can be the arbitrator between the victim and perpetrator, because they neither victim nor perpetrator themselves, these young people. It took us 13 years to get approval from the government of a text less than 100 pages with full of photograph. I brought a copy to Nicole, sitting in the back row. It took 13 years to approve the text less than 100 pages in English. But persistence, but transparency and sincerity, which is perhaps the respect perhaps most needed by all victims in Cambodia, it's the key to get this through the system. It took us from 1996 to 2002 to get what we call the green light to start to develop the textbook. It takes from 2002 to 2004 to complete the project. Take 2002 to 2006 to approve by both government, national committee, and international scholar. It only in 2007 that the book has been published in 7 languages. Actually, I want also to get the regional impact among ASEAN countries in 7 languages. And only in 2008, we were tasked to produce a teacher guidebook, which began to train 3,200 teachers nationwide to teach a history of democratic Cambodia, not a genocide education per se, but particularly on the history of democratic Cambodia. So 13 years, but it's happening now for the first time in 30 years now. High school students, grade 9 to 12, have begun to learn this in school in full history. And also there's a national examination on this particular topic nationwide. Between grade 9 and 12, there consists of 1 million children, aged between 15 to 19, who are now learning the history. So in the guidebook, the way we produced based on the principle of national reconciliation, which we use a lot of art, of drama, of music, of song, and interview process, and informing the local authority when you see the event that perhaps you're familiar and would lead to genocide as such. So the guidebook, and among the 3,200 teachers that we train, about 20% were former Khmer Rouge themselves. And some even hold high position during the Khmer Rouge time. And now they become the teacher of history. And in the classroom in Cambodia, they consist between 60 to 70 students. And I can assure you, at least less than half are the children of the perpetrator. So how do you teach them? You know? So that is important, that the guidebook look into the common sense as the common humanity. I give you one example. Usually we work with high school. We have a tour, outdoor classroom, and at one time I brought a prison chief and a prisoner from the same prison to the classroom, but I didn't tell the student who these people are. So I brought them in, so I started to talk about all the Khmer Rouge, and then people were asking a lot of questions about prison, about survival, and so forth. I said, well, look, I don't know much. I wasn't in that prison, but if you want to know more about that prison, here's the prison chief, and here's a survivor. The whole room was silent for 15 minutes. Nobody talked. I think they were more prepared to attack or something. They were so silent, all these kids. And then the questions start to throw to the survivor, how you feel, your parent, and so forth. I said, why no one asked the prison chief? No one asked the Khmer Rouge right here, the perpetrator. And then the room was silent again. Nobody talked. And then as one young boy, maybe 16, 17, he came and with his bag like this. And he said, give me the microphone. He said to me, I said, here. And then he said to the prison chief, he said, oh, I know that you joined the Khmer Rouge because you want power, right? So it was his question. And the whole classroom clapped their hand almost half an hour. They were so happy with the question, you know? And I said, stop, they keep clap their hand. You know, the whole classroom clapped their hand. And then I said, look, he want to explain. And then was quiet, and he explained. But you can see that they don't believe what the prison chief have to say. There's no way that he believes. But still important for them to listen, to hear what they have to say. Not only one side of the victim, you know. And, you know, when you ask students to tell a story about their parents, they have heard of the story because it becomes a living history right at home. One student stood up and said, look, my father told me a story, and he said that during the Khmer Rouge time, his knees is bigger than his head. And people were laughing at it. It was so funny. And the teacher said, look, why you laugh at this suffering of people? You know, you behave. People were suffering, people were die, you know, everything. And, you know, and I said, is it wrong thing for them to laugh after 30 years? Or they should talk about it and being sad and cry all the time? You know, so sometimes we as a victim, when we speak to foreigner, to other, we have to behave as a victim, because victim become a title, become our identity. We don't want to move on, become beside a victim, you know. We have to look sad, we have to angry all the time, we have to come together, anger, or screaming or something, to laugh, to smile, to be normal. It's not a victim. And I think that something is wrong in that sense, that we have to understand that we're human. You know, you lost someone that you love today, you might laugh next week, and that's okay. You know, it's because we're human. And a lot of Khmer Rouge have helped others. They were not just bad people. You know, a lot of Khmer Rouge also do good things. In Krangtachan, where of the case that the group of students from Berkeley now working on is where the Khmer Rouge were targeted as a Vietnamese and killed in that prison. The prison chief, the deputy prison chief is still alive today, who have killed a prisoner but yet adopted a child of that prisoner today. After killing the father, he feels so guilty, so he adopted a child and raised a child. The child now 46, 47 years old and turned against him because you killed my father. But yet he adopted you, I adopted you, and raised you, you know, brought you a family. You see, it's if I were you, if you were them, what would you do? And this is a real case. And he stand in front of the child that he adopted, say, look, you do whatever you like, and I'm sorry what I have done to your father. For that reason, that's why I adopted and raised you. He said, you do that because you want to cover up the crime you have committed against my father. He said all this logical reason to the deputy prison chief. And they live in the same village, actually the same household in the Kau provinces. So reconciliation, I hope that perhaps we cannot bring people together. Maybe in some cases they cannot be reconciled, but at least the growing of the young generation that perhaps can distance such a feeling and allow a society to grow, to move on. Because you can spend the rest of your life and try to figure out what to do with the deputy prison chief and to the child that he adopted. And perhaps it's never happened. Because it's becoming so personal. It's not a truth commission, you're flying in and ask people to speak to each other and ask for forgiveness. No, it's not working. And besides, Cambodian having truth commission for 30 years already. Look what they have done in the last 30 years. To recognize what they have done, their effort, it's healing. But to ignore and bring in something that's not belong to them, it's harming, victimizing the victim. So I think that you can only create a process. You can educate the children. You can set up a tribunal. But in the end of the day, victims still have the obligation to pick all these broken pieces and put back together, because only you know where they are and which piece belongs to which part of the glass, as the broken glass. And only you have to decide whether you want to be reconciled or to move on with your life. No one cannot do that to you. You're already broken, and you have this huge, tremendous obligation to continue your life, and that is the most difficult thing of all for the victim to endure after genocide. So this is Cambodia. For us, we decide to take education as perhaps a mean, because also in terms of investing in the future so that the kid can grow with a better understanding, make better judgment, become better leaders. So maybe other people would take different approach. But I believe in education, looking around in Asia, in ASEAN country, in Thailand, for example, in Vietnam, if you don't put too much, if you don't invest in education, then the future would be a repeated history. And I do not want to see genocide happen again in Cambodia. I don't want any kid here experience the way I have experienced to understand genocide. And genocide is something that impossible to explain in words. And that's why genocide requires each of us responsibility, the state, the government, the UN to act, all of us. Otherwise, if we continue to divide as human being, as humanity, if we keep selectively that this is Rwanda, this is Cambodia, this is Iraq, this is East Timor, that would allow genocide to happen again, and stop asking yourself why it keeps happening, because you're the one who created it, allow it to happen again and again. So in case of Cambodia, I hope that education would contribute to not just only bringing the contributing to the healing process, but also to the future of the country in terms of genocide prevention. So the center have started it as a very, we didn't start as an NGO, to be honestly. We start from Yale University as a research institution. So we purely using academic approach. We don't use activist approach. Penny Ed would have mentioned it as 3,000 NGO that do advocacy. And that's important to understand. When you do advocacy, you have to understand the issue. If you don't understand the issue, then just talking, So I'm a bit negative about NGO myself. I'm an NGO myself. I think NGO has to be reformed in a sense to really help the society. So we came using a research approach, because Cambodia is a country that lose trust among friends, among neighbors. We don't trust each other because we're broken, as I said from the beginning. So research, to me, research heals. People say love and time, but research does heal research, because the country have so much lie, so much manipulated, and that research become a tool that's why I create a slogan called "Searching for the Truth," because I don't think that I'm neither historian nor scholar nor lecturer. Please. I basically a son of a woman who wants to do something for her. That's it. So I much depend on help from others, and I believe that each of us hold our own truth, and that need to be speaking out. Because how can you master the whole genocide to understand how it happened? It's impossible. And you've got millions, from the king down to the farmer in Cambodia, lost at least a family member. All of us were victims, even the Khmer Rouge themselves. So I create this to encourage people to search their own truth, to define their own meaning of justice, to familiar with a process that they comfortable with, to be utilized to move on with their life. So, we create a lot of programs, and with all these things in mind, I much depend on the help from others. So the way I set up the center, it sounds, success and all this kind of thing, but I want to point out 3 mistakes and 3 challenges that happen. And I think that's important to create your own success. You should learn mistakes from others. People call lesson learned or something, but I call mistake. It's really a mistake. And it's okay if you make mistake, and you know it's a mistake, you're doing it, it's okay. But it's a mistake. I point out to 3 challenges first. When we first started it, we have a huge political challenge because nobody supports this. Nobody wants to come near. And I must credit U.S. government was the only government that passed U.S. Genocide Justice Act in 1994, signed into law by Bill Clinton, allow State Department to give a grant to Yale University through a competition to conduct this research. In Cambodia, Cambodian government was the only government who supported this research because the Khmer Rouge were in the jungle and fighting with the government. So, and the rest, everywhere you turn, people turn away from you. There's a huge political, my research budget is $25 a month. You can call Professor Ben Kennedy at Yale today. That research budget a month is $25. The day I left America, go back to Cambodia, there's no money for the air ticket, so we use Ben Kennedy American Express credit card to buy a ticket for me. And he said, go, you survive the Khmer Rouge, you can eat prahok there, you will survive, so don't worry. No money, no nothing. So I went there with empty hand, nothing, with just the heart. I have nothing. And the grant that got approved, it didn't appear until 1 year later, which is about $450,000 for 2-year research. And 75% must be spent at Yale. And Yale very expensive. So I had $25 in my pocket to do research, to put Khmer Rouge leader on trial. I went there in 1995, and I first went to see the Prime Minister Hun Sen, and I said, oh, great, it's good. So don't worry, there's plenty of witnesses in this country. All of them were witnesses. You need help, let me know. But anyway, political challenge is very difficult. There's only 2 governments that support you, and there's very little amount of resources, but you got to do something. Secondly is networking. You go there, I went to all the human rights NGO for support. They said, this is not about human rights, it's about the past. It's over. Why you want to dig up the past? It's just like in Khmer we said, meaning that you have a wound and you poke it, and then why are you doing that? So everyone I go, people said, why are you doing this? I feel like I'm crazy, I feel a little bit crazy. I said, well, this is, you lost 2 million lives. You don't think it's a human rights violation? I said, no, this is over. So, it's a huge problem in terms of getting networking to support. Nobody at all. I will tell you how I deal with this later, but I want to throw out the challenges. The third challenge is security. I got death threats daily, sometimes in public. But since I have the interest to have a trial, all of the threats I documented. And later on used in the court now to put it in jail now. Like Ian Threat, for example, she wrote a very long letter attacking me. Ian's son sent the police to my sister's house. It's made me very, very angry. You have killed my family, you killed my sister, now you threaten my surviving sister and my mother. And you even attack me. Why should I be afraid of you? That's what I respond to them. I even flew to see Ian in Thailand in 1996 alone with helicopter. I come to a point that I would trade life to make a change. And I usually told to Yale, I said, look, because I go there sort of as a Yale contract staff, so there's no insurance. So I said, look, don't worry. I put my life in the hand of God. That's my insurance company. It's free, So that's what I told Yale, don't worry about that. But security was a big challenge. But I think it's make our project stronger. It was our strength. Then you resist. You resist to give up. You want to push forward. How dare you say that it's not a human rights violation when you already know that lost 2 million lives, like everybody lost a family member. How dare you say there's no justice? Justice has been, closed. So it may push me to even work further. So that's the 3 challenges. Mistake. I actually have 29 mistakes that I list every time, every year we do management evaluation. There's always a mistake coming up. So far we made 29 mistakes. And some of them are very, very serious mistakes. And it's too personal. One of them is decision making. It's me. Because sometimes I take it too personal. Because I'm a victim, I give you an example. Sometimes I would look, because I think that genocide is a crime against humanity. So I think that everyone has the obligation, especially the state government, had the obligation to do something about it. So I would go to Germany, to Switzerland, write to them for support. And usually a country that you expect to come forward would say no to you. And that made me very angry. And I stopped, I cut the relationship until today. Even reject their support one day after they come back. And that's a very wrong thing to do, because it's not about me, about the institution that I'm working with. But I make such a decision many, many, many times. I reject, sort of like teach them a lesson. You know, you've been through this yourself, Holocaust in Europe. How dare you not to see this as a crime against humanity? You know, we're human too. We're not just Cambodian second-class citizens, but we're human as equal as everybody else. And it's your obligation also to do something about it. We do something about it. We're not just expecting you to do something about for us, but we take initiative. But we just want your collaboration. But you turn away. You know, how dare you do such a thing to humanity? And I have a strong rejection to such a response, and I continue to reject, and that is a very big mistake that I make, because it can harm the center, it can harm the future, it can harm all the good work you have done, which have done by many around the world. That's one mistake. It's political decision. Second mistake is that I don't like IT people, so I hate technology. When I saw people with a thick glass and do like this, I got nervous. I said, what are you doing with my computer? And they just go around. And yesterday we went to see the film with Professor and the CD is not working. I almost go and punch the CD, you know, do something, you know. I hate technology. And then, because of my weakness of technology, I failed to document mass grave on video camera. 20,000 mass graves that I have visited only in photograph. And now they're all disappearing. I didn't make effort to look for video camera to record the site that we visited, that we interviewed. I didn't do a thing, you know, because I hate technology. I don't know how to use, I only know to use email and Word program. I don't know all this PDF, JPEG, whatever. You know, because I study political science, and I remember Aristotle said, to write a history, you need only a pencil and a piece of paper. But now it's 2009, you know. You need a computer, you need a laptop. And I still live with this kind of philosophy, you know, from century ago. So I fail to use technology to document. I don't even look at the other website, it's very boring. You know, I don't even check our own website at least maybe once a year. People say, what happened? And you have all these million documents. Where are all this material? And then I would go to the filing cabinet and say, here, copy it for you, scan or something like that. So I failed to use technology to communicate to the world, and that is a big mistake. And now we try to improve a little bit. And I leave this completely to all the geeks or to all the people with the thick glass now to taking care of that. And you know, I give you one example. I work in Iraq too. In Iraq, there's a meeting about creating a database for Saddam Hussein tribunal. I also work with in East Timor. I work with many post-conflict society also in Africa. In Iraq, I went to Iraq in 2003. Can you imagine? I was called from the State Department, said, would you like to go there to work on the documentation with the civil society? You know what I did? Yes. Because I wanted to go to the war zone. So much. I love war zone. I love adventure. So I said yes. And then the telephone told me that I would be joined by either 5 people. We were going to land in Jordan and will be transported by a military plane to Baghdad. When I arrived in Jordan, I was the only one who went to Iraq. Everyone canceled their trip. I was there alone, and I was happy. You know, there's a tank in front of me and behind me. I said, what happened if they shoot me from here? You know, I just keep wandering in the car. And there's a huge tank or soldier in front of me and behind me, and it was in the middle of the convoy to Baghdad. In Iraq, there's a big debate about database. And you know, and when you go on a database discussion, you can go for years and years. So you have to say which one you like and go for and tell them what to do. And you allow the IT people to discuss database, it takes them 5 years. You know? So database is a nightmare, but yet it's most needed in terms of documentation, storing all these materials. So we decided to use UNESCO database, which is free, because we have no money. I told you we had $25. So we decided to use the UNESCO program, which is free of charge, and you can store more than a millions data in it. Anyway, so the third mistake that I made is that I'm a victim, but I hire no victim to work at the center. I don't want the victim to work for the center. Because usually victim, to be honestly, sometimes we have selective memory, or sometimes we exaggerate because we're victim. And we don't want to hear from the other side of us. We don't want to believe that some other Khmer Rouge also do good thing. And we always say that, think that whatever we say is true, and no one challenge us, challenge our story. If you go to Cambodia, if you ask a survivor a story, I bet you would not dare to challenge their story. And sometimes can be very exaggerated. Not that because they lie to you or want to lie to you, because it's so difficult to explain to you. So I saw that if we take all the victims to work, we hear only one side of the story. But how can we know the whole truth about the other side? So I only take young people to work because they need a victim, no perpetrator. So all the staff at the center are very, very young. I'm perhaps the oldest one. And we have a few senior, the rest is age under 35. And all have to be a student because we don't have money to pay for them, so they have to work as a student. So one of our resources is students, not just from Cambodia, but also from abroad. Every year we take over 25 interns per year from schools around the world. And I treat them as my boss. And many of them now become law professor, become senior, become somebody, and they now stay on board as advisor and help the center. You create a new generation that doesn't have the direct impact from what happened from genocide, so they be more open to understand on both sides. If you take the victim side, then you only hear one side of the story, but it might have been a strong voice in terms of advocacy to push for something. But I decide only to work with young people are very difficult, you know, they always text messages and telephone. I hate that. And then they talk about freedom, human right, the right to use the telephone during working hour. You know, they have all this kind of reasoning about human rights. It's bothering, but then, you know, it's, I think that they are the best resources, and they have the energetic, they have the English, they have the capacity. And it's been great, but I should have at least balance the staff between half victim and half people who were born after. But later on, we even take the Khmer Rouge to work. We have expanded later on, but those are mistakes that we have made. And today, among 45 staff, that's the majority is still young people at the center. When you go there, they're all very young. And we also supply information to other agencies, like for example, like the Vietnam, the MIA, for example. And usually when we have visitors, people say, this is your staff? You look like 14. You know, Cambodians look very young. I mean, I'm sorry, Asian age well. We look very young all the time. So I said, your staff, you might be 12 years old. I said, no, she's 26, she has 3 children. You know, but we age well. So, you know, sorry about that. So, you know, I should have balance that should be some older and senior, but anyway, so those are mistakes that we have, that we keep making the same mistake for over a year. Last, before we open for question, I was asked yesterday, 2 days ago in New York, so what you use to measure your success? You seem very successful, you know. Professor Penny Edwards have said the same thing. You know, the day I started this in 1987 as a volunteer at Texas A&M University. I tell you a little bit of story. I was very naive and young, so at one point I was so much I joined the campaign to oppose the return of the Khmer Rouge, and I was assigned as a volunteer to do campaign in South, in Texas, in Arkansas, in many parts of the country in the South of America. So I usually call students, we have a student association, and then to do a protest or something, demand the US government to investigate the crime of the Khmer Rouge. At one point that I made a phone call from Dallas to Texas A&M for a couple of months to organize a huge protest at Texas A&M University. I put a lot of flyers, video and everything, you know, and I remember I have Toyota car, 86 or something like that. And I got lost on the way to Texas A&M University. I got there 4 people show up to the protest. Exactly 4 people, and I think 2 of them were boyfriend and girlfriend. Give me some hamburger and french fry. And it was 4 people. It was like, wow, 4 people show up, you know? I was so naive and I mean, it was so stupid. But I started for a long, long time. And so when, but I never thought about success because all I wanted to make my mother happy. So when I do all this work, I never think about indicator or measure or number of people that you interview. No, I want just to do it. And I love to doing this because every time I do it, I feel like my mother's smiling and she's happy. And I want her to be a happy mother. You know, she's 84 and she lost everybody in her household. And I'm the youngest son and I never been with her. I wanted so much to be with her, but the war suffered, a genocide suffered, a refugee invasion. So I never I have been with my mother for about 6 years since I was born, with a dream that became my strength today. When I was about 5, 6, she started to tell me about the dream that she had when she's pregnant. In the dream, my mother, she's pure peasant from Takao, cannot read, cannot write, but she has a beautiful smile and she's just such a lovely woman. And to be a mother is all you need. You know, you don't have to, I don't want my mother to be a lawyer, you must be a boring mother, you know. If your mother's a lawyer, my God, or a doctor, you must look at your eye, you eat every day. My mother don't do things such things to me. She makes sure I have food to eat and go to school. In her dream, she dreamed that she lost me in a jungle and she was so sad and she was looking for me. And then she saw me sleeping in a hammock between the 2 mountains in her dream. And during the Khmer Rouge time, we were evacuated to Planet Prayer. In English, mean the Eye of Buddha. It's a mountain, name of the mountain. Exactly the mountain in her dream. So she told me that you will never die because I dreamed you sitting on that mountain and you will become somebody. And that became my strength. And I never thought of dying. I always said someday I will go to America, and I made to America by myself at the age of 17 because of that dream. So my mother believed in a dream, you know, she's so pure. So when she dreams something, it's coming true. So because of that dream become my strength, become who I am today. So I want to give her something and to make her happy because she has seen me torture. She have suffered. She have, you know, but I never see her crying. And that's bothering me. I want her to cry or scream or something. It's never happened. And I think that my mother has such a great time during the Khmer Rouge because she knows everything to take care of us because she's a peasant. She knows how to catch crab, catch snail. She knows which leaf you can eat. She knows what time when the sun's rise. She knows when it's about to rain. She become God for all of us. And I think my mother has such, because we much depend on her for everything. We don't know how to carry water. We don't know how to cut wood. We don't know how to build a house. And she does everything for us. And I think that's the best time in her life during the Khmer Rouge time. And perhaps that's why she never cried. But I want her to cry with all the silence she has to endure. So when I work, I never think about success or not success. I just do it. You know, and to me, when this question was asked for the first time 2 days ago in New York, I respond, perhaps just slip from my mouth, saying that I would call it success if genocide can be prevented. And that I would call the success of the center. Right now, none of genocide be prevented. It's keep happening. So why we should declare success so quickly? People are dying in Darfur, maybe in East, maybe in Burma. You know, it's anywhere in the world. So this was my first response to that question 2 days ago. But before that, I never considered any success at all. As long as my mother happy, I think that I'm happy. So I would end now so that we can begin to have Q&A. Please allow me to take a glass of water because I'm thirsty. And then you can ask any question you like. Thank you.
To speak to ask questions of Youk. He's delighted to engage with a wide range of questions, so please. Yes.
To finish your story about the perpetrator, what was his explanation? When you said the perpetrator and the victim both explained their situations and the students didn't want to hear what the perpetrator had to say.
He said that he joined because of the war, his village was bombed, and at that time men were drafted to join the movement, and he had no other choice because otherwise he had to escape to other part of the country. Because at that time it was the certain area were controlled by the Khmer Rouge, and if you escape and you were caught, you will be killed, and family also would be in jeopardy. So to protect the family, you have to join the Khmer Rouge. But in some cases, they joined because it was a status, because you got nice clothes, you got a status, people look up to you. But in his case, he blamed the bomb. He lived in Kandahar. It was heavily bombed. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Burma really quickly there at the end, because I know there's a few opposition groups right now who are calling for a commission of inquiry into war crimes in Eastern Burma. But I wonder how the situation changes, because I mean, in parts of Burma, it's really not post-conflict. So how does that complicate the situation in terms of calling for tribunals, in terms of international action and attention? If I understood your presentation, I mean, it sounds like your work, you sort of see it as taking these events and sort of making them into history in a very sort of deliberate way. Is that possible if the situation is still really ongoing, if it's not post-conflict?
I have been invited to speak a few occasions with Burmese living in Thailand, but I think that there is a lack of a different approach. You know, they came as an activist, and which is happening also around Cambodian case. I mean, Cambodian case started to campaign in 1980. It took 30 years to have a tribunal, you know, to put in this way. I have encouraged other Burmese NGO to look in terms of documentation, because, you know, when we have when the UN came to Cambodia in 1998, first thing they looked into is possible evidence. They want to have a success tribunal. So if those have not been documented on time, and then it would not so encouraging for any form of tribunal to be established. And documentation very, very important. And also you have to make a decision between connecting the past and today and the future. It's a very delicate situation. We have people who undecided whether to focus on the Khmer Rouge or today problem of Cambodia, for example. So you need a strong group that really contribute to a new approach in case of Burma. Burma and Cambodia has similar situation, also refugee, military, dictatorship. Actually, Burmese government also visit the Khmer Rouge too. We have a file on the Burmese government in Cambodia as well. And they don't have to go too far away. They just only come to Cambodia and learn the experience. They have to go to America, to Europe, I mean, the neighbor. But there's hope. I think that can happen. There's hope, and there's always some opportunities coming up. I'm telling you that one of the advantages about the tribunal in Cambodia, because the accused does not believe that the court can ever be established, because they believe that there's so much big powers involved, and there's a lack of understanding of the international law has been involved in the last 30 years. So they're basically stupid, because their stupidity then allow us to have a tribunal. You know, so sometimes it just happened in such a way. 30 years ago would be impossible, but sometimes you keep persistent in continuity, and while you are working toward, like I support the tribunal, but I know that the tribunal would not prosecute thousands of perpetrators, so I have a approach in terms of making history, a sweet revenge, educating the world what happened. So you have to always have come with a twin objective, because tribunal is an important element in any society, but you know the loss of human life, it's beyond tribunal can bring about for the living survivor. So as a survivor, as a victim, you have to see which is suitable in case of Burma to deal with. For us, we take history as a way to also to bring the circle to an end.
So, yes, first?
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
I know that the courts are going to have 2 cases, 2 trials.
Correct.
Is that correct? And then the second trial will consist of a group of senior leaders.
4.
4. And I did read an article with the co-prosecutor, Robert Petit, when he resigned.
He left
that
now.
he has dossier files building a case for several more people.
Case 3, yes.
So I was wondering if those files would ever sort of be presented, even if the tribunal itself might not agree to bring those people to justice.
The file has been submitted. So now in the hand of the co-investigating judge to decide whether they would pursue investigation or not. But yet, you know, like I have this exhibition, it's called The Importance of Case 2. Case 2 is the most important, the most historical, because the 4 are the highest senior leader of the Khmer Rouge, and they never confess, they refuse to speak, and they blame others. If you can resolve case 2, I think case 3, case 4, case 5 is easy. There's no trust between the UN and the government of Cambodia because of the past association. So, and you suddenly come to case 3, it doesn't make any sense even from a peasant point of view. You're not yet finished case 2, and now you've got case 3. And the case 2 is the most important one, so it doesn't make any sense. But I think that it's a policy of the court that to attract support, to show that the court is, you know, I think that the court has been threatened by the well-prepared survivor of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia to deal with the process. A lot of people say that there's a lot of delay during negotiation and so forth, but I think that the public have known so much about, have benefited so much from what happened from the negotiation. So they're well prepared. None, maybe I don't know everybody, but I have not seen a person being traumatized or intimidated by the court establishments in 2006. People want to become a witness, you don't call them a witness, they're upset. People want to come forward, nobody afraid. And that is a challenge, it's a threat to the UN, who usually come from far away with satellite telephone, with all escort, and try to pick a piece of paper and fly to other country to interview. In Cambodia, talk to me. I'm here. You know, where were you 30 years ago? I want to become a witness. So you have to do something, you know, to me. So let's case 3, but case 3 is a small fish. You fry the big fish first. And then people say, okay, now we know there's going to be benefit, there's going to. So that's why I made this exhibition, also made as a booklet, distribute nationwide, that we should focus on case 2. Nobody talks so far, and they blame others. They blame the lower rank and file, they blame the international community, they blame the king. They don't, you know, they're not cooperate with the court. So I think if your case 2 result, you shouldn't worry about case 3, 4, and 5, and then you will know that where the court will end. But now it's a little bit it's not right to think about case 3 while case 2 is still not yet even stand trial.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over the last 15 years, I've been very much thinking about those pieces that need to be pulled together after genocide or ethnic cleansing. And over that time, as I've worked in the Balkans or Kosovo or Rwanda or whatever, I became increasingly concerned about the emphasis on tribunals. Probably close to $1 billion at this point has been spent on setting up various tribunals, whether they're multinational or local or whatever. And I can see the value to some degree, but the question always is, how many cases do you need, and what do they actually accomplish? What piece of rebuilding a society do trials have? Gradually, I became more and more interested in the fact that very little emphasis was placed on educating the young of a country, which was why I became concerned about the restoration of history in these various countries, which I think you have as well. And I guess I'm wondering what you think about sort of how funds are allocated, how when countries are trying to deal with the rebuilding of a society, how little is put into the rebuilding of schools, in history, teaching democratic participation, human rights, as opposed to this quite extensive emphasis on the development of tribunals, trials, and to some degree truth commissions, which often have very little to do with the truth.
That is why I fought to have a trial in Cambodia. Imagine a trial at The Hague that would exactly fall to what you're just saying. What victims have lost everything. The only thing that we have left is hope for the future. And the trial is a path to lead us to the future. It belongs to us. This horrible crime belongs to us. And we're proud that we have lived through it, we have survived, and we can tell you something about what happened. So I fought. I was a stranger at that time to fight among all the NGOs to have a tribunal in Cambodia while recognizing that Cambodia is such a corrupted and have such a legal system. Because I want the trial belong to the people. I want the people own the process. It's not about the verdict. It's not about how many cases. It's about you own the process. You own the history. And that must be on the ground where the crime was committed against the people of Cambodia. So that's sort of my justification, point one. Secondly is that during the tribunal, there is a discussion about the budget. And so all this budget does not taking away from the budget to rebuild the countries at all. It's a voluntary fund. So it's showing that it's a noble act of the international community. At one point, they perhaps have supported the movement, but now they came together and want to do something for the country that they have been war in the past. So it's a noble act to help Cambodia to get away from the culture of blame other for the crime that has committed by your own people against your own citizen. So there's many reasons in that field. And secondly is that, like I said, the trial is about the future. It's not about the victim. What the trial in Cambodia can bring back what we have lost? Nothing. Nothing. But why we need a tribunal is about the future. It's about a form, a court is an important element in any society. You need to have a court. And since we have such a weak court in Cambodia, we hope that the trial can produce a better standard so that the current court system can improve, can live up to a certain standard so that can lead a better life for their own citizen. So this has been thought of during the whole negotiation. The tribunal actually originally was budgeted very low, but because of the fight, because suddenly that became a success story, and that money became the important part of the process, and that is bothering me. Originally, the budget was only for $30 million for 3-year period, because you have all the evidence, all the witnesses. There's no threat, all accessible, all were well trained as the judge, the interpreter, and so forth. But it's becoming a little bit politicized, which, as I said, had I have a choice as a victim, I would not depend on the government of Cambodia and the UN to conduct a trial for us, because both of them were associated with the Khmer Rouge one way or the other. But we have no choice, and we have to fight for our own role and have to be on the ground. We have nothing. The victims have empty hands, while the other two sides have power, have resources, have backup from the international community. Look at the victims, they have nothing. It's bothering me when I see people victims who go to the court, they were divided by a glass wall. And you see one side, all poor peasants have grandma, have packed their food to see a process that would bring some justice to them. But on the other side, you have all people wear Gucci, wear all these fancy shoe and tie and suit, and with all these shoes now, they don't wear black clothes anymore. They wear our own clothes, you know? It's bothering. I want to break that wall many times, you know? At least that this belongs to us. But you know, there's reality of life. You cannot stop fighting for your own role, your own justice, and that we have to continue, and we can sit down and blame and make all the reason. Cambodia is a poor country. Money is always a solution to all the problem, and that's very wrong to think like that. There's many of school in Cambodia, I can assure you, but you need to have good curriculum. You have to good teacher. If you have only school, you don't have this program. School is nothing. You know, that's what's happening now. There's plenty of school in Cambodia. you know. So these have also other source. So court is important for me. You have to have a final judgment from a court of law to settle with the past. For 30 years, Cambodians have tried everything, and why we so want to have a tribunal? Because there's no final judgment from a court of law that we trust. So the tribunal is the last solution to Cambodian genocide in Cambodia. We have tried everything for 30 years. It's opposite from other countries who have a tribunal and then have truth commission and so forth. Cambodia do the other way around. They have tried everything for 30 years, live under embargo, poverty, fight with the Khmer Rouge, have to own everything. This is the only last solution to Cambodian genocide. And I think that we should give a try. And at least that's something that we can give. And based on the nationwide statistic, 86% support the process. Something that appeal to them as the recognition of the crime that have committed against them, or believe what they have talked about 30 years ago. It's very meaningful for them. And that helped them to be free and to move on. And I think that that's why, to me, I would not support, and I disagree strongly when people propose the court to be at The Hague. The court belongs to us. The horrible history of the Khmer Rouge belongs to us. We're proud that we have lived through and have survived, and we can now educate you about what happened. We want to get out being a victim to become just Youk Chhang. And please don't call me victim. And that's the meaning of the whole process in Cambodia, not the verdict. Let's say the court found Ieng Sri not guilty. I can guarantee you the whole country will say he's guilty. I can guarantee you, if the court said it's not guilty, I can guarantee you, we already have the verdict. But why we want to respect the rule of law, and that's something we want to teach the criminal, that we don't want to do the same thing they did to us. And that is something is so difficult for us to endure after genocide. And that has to be done because it's all about our children. It's all about our future. And the children know this story, one way or the other, you know, in Cambodia, because it become a living family history. Everyone have heard of this one way or the other, and I can assure you that. But the question of how much they know, how much they want to believe, or how much they resist is another issue. But they all have heard of this, that has been happening. Horrible things happen in their own country. And that is important to see. Seeing and hearing is justice. So it must be on the ground. I have fought for this in Geneva Convention in Geneva in 1995, that the trial must be in Cambodia for that reason. And I'm happy with all this problem. With the court, you have two choices. You can pick on the court because the court always have problem, trust me. They have a long list of problems. Or you pick a choice to support, to help the court to move, to achieve a common interest. It's what we call justice. But court is important. Court is important. I respect the court by not trying to interfering, even though I'm holding the evidence. But yet, the victim are my judge, not the lawyer sitting in the bench in the tribunal. I listen to the people who told me how they feel like about what happened. So you have a choice, so you choose which one you like.
We have three questions. So the first is here, and then
Youk, you mentioned that the top 4 people have blamed the international community, various sources, and haven't taken any responsibility for themselves, for their actions. Is there enough documentation and witnesses who will actually come forward to speak against them that they could be found guilty? I understand there's documentation with Nunchia's signature, but you know, how much is there that the prosecutors can really use that will substantiate their guilt?
So far, we provide 600,000 documents. This is from the Khmer Rouge Top Secret Archive, not to mention Stasi Archive, the Vietnamese Communist Archive, file from Europe, which I collect, file from South Africa. I collect files from both, from the within, also from the outside. So when the Khmer Rouge blame other, you have to look at how other at that time view the Khmer Rouge, their relationship to the Khmer Rouge. I'm not trained archivist, to be honestly, but documentation is very important. You have any crime of genocide, it's all circumstantial. You have to link them between document, interview, physical evidence, photograph, and film. You have to link them all the time. Had they not have enough evidence, they would have been released already. So that should be the response, because there's plenty. And witness is one of the sources of evidence, but there's so much documented from their own party and also from their associate in the past, like the communist associate, the communist regime, for example. So there's plenty of documented evidence. It's just a matter of we have to respect the right to defend. Let them speak, let them be stupid, or stuff like that. But you shouldn't worry about that. And I can guarantee you, I have read every single page in the last 15 years. Every document, when they come to the center, I was the first one who read and analyze and put into database. Edit every single page, every single photograph, every single massacre site. And that's plenty. I don't have to be a lawyer. You need only a lousy lawyer to put them on trial. That's all you need.
So Patra, Michael, and Julie.
Thank you very much for being here. I have two questions. The first is I'm just interested in when you talk about education, right? So you talk about, I want to know what the children of the perpetrators or the teachers that are perpetrators reaction or their own statement, in the classes. And the second question, I was just very, I think it's so poignant of you to say that the success can only come if we can prevent genocide. So that leads to the education part that you said that, the story you tell about having the two sides sitting there, and once you say this is a prison guard and all the students won't talk to them, and then basically boo the person. So there is this sense that the students feel that, oh, this is a bad person, this is a good person, and it can never be me.
That's right.
I will never be like that. But the fact is there's about so many million people that chief of villages and next door neighbor turn into a torturer themselves. So are there educations there that talked about the process by which a person a good person choose to become evil, or not just joining the Khmer Rouge because they were forced to join, but actively torture lots of people? Like, there's the education in the school that you're trying to propose or encourage, address that?
Actually, my strategy to get it out first, and then you start to narrow down the issue on racial, on discrimination, on torture, and so forth. Because it's still a sensitive topic to the government, genocide. The reason that it's been taking so long to teach this as a piece of history, because genocide was a political act, and always will be. And that's one have to keep in mind. So the strategy is to get it out at a very minimum, a very small, just to start it, and then you develop. We're gonna have the quality control of teaching next year to see how far that this can be developed. I use a lot of art. It's the role of art. Art is healing. If you turn on Voice of America, you can hear the drama that we produce about forgiveness, about the small act of humanity by the perpetrator, about a little thing that you should ask for forgiveness or say sorry. So now we use a lot of form of art. When you have legal process, you have education, you have outreach, but when it comes to healing, when it comes to dealing with these two groups, you need piece of art. So we use a lot of drama and music, and if you listen to Voice of America tonight, 9 o'clock at night, times in California, you will hear this drama playing on, and then allow teacher to have a call Hello VOA. They talk on the radio. So in the classroom, we have a role play between victim and perpetrator. We can have one student play as a victim, one student play as a perpetrator, and then they switch the role. And there's a training for teacher to look into common sense of humanity, for example. And the teacher were trained strictly to follow that guidebook. So the guidebook is very important now. But 5 years later, just a piece of paper, I think. But now it's very important because it's a sensitive topic, so that's why we produce guidebook. All of them know history. They can tell you by heart. But because of that sensitivity, we produce guidebook to instruct the teacher to specifically follow that method, that way of teaching. And then for the student, we use role play. And also we use reporting, we use interviews, we use outdoor classroom. And we also have a team. Next year, we anticipate to recruit about 100 international students to work with local students in Cambodia to observe the classroom of 200 high schools out of 1,700 high schools across the country to see how the teaching is moving on. And that is still early to say, is that this is going to be good or have to be modified. But at least out there now. And with all this strategy to back up in case something go wrong. So every time when I go to the classroom, I emphasize the teaching based on the principle of reconciliation, and then it's a role play, there's a form art that included, and then let's see we go from here. Usually you can feel that the question from the student who they are. Sometimes it's very hard to guess. Sometimes students might say, oh, Mr. Youk Chhang, do you think that all Khmer Rouge is bad? And that must be a children of the perpetrator. You can feel that. You can feel that. You can sense that. And the teacher trained psychologically, pedagogically to understand that kind of question. And then to have limits interact, but yet we have, the way we train them, we let the student work as a team rather than teacher and student, but make students become teacher themselves and take a role. For example, we have a team of 5. One is a timekeeper, one is a motivator, one is a note taker, one is a presenter, and so they take the role like that. So they become among themselves. So then allow the teacher to a little bit, since if the teacher was a former Khmer, it would be difficult to challenge 60 students who were children of the victim, you know. And besides that, because after 30 years, a lot of big questions floating around the country. And sometimes the student asks the question without knowing what's going on. And it's so difficult for the teacher to respond because it's beyond their ability. This is high school teacher, you know. Even I myself face this problem. Usually we take drama from village to village. And after drama, there's a discussion about tribunal. And you can feel, when you perform drama in the village full of victims, you see a lot of children ask questions. When you perform drama in the place where full of perpetrator, they don't ask questions, they talk about the story. They resist. They try to define who they are. At one point in Kampong Cham, in the middle of the night, a young boy about 15 asked me a question. Mr. Youk, why we overstone King Sihanouk? I have no answer to that. I would say we'll read book, you know, go see Ben Kennan to see David Chandler, but you know, he's just 15 years old kid, but the question is so huge because he heard of this question from somewhere. And had he asked this question to the teacher in the classroom, the teacher would have no answer, would become personal interpretation. It would be driven away from the curriculum, from the guidebook that we produce. So the strategy to make them focus and then start it and then grow from there and then use a lot of arts in the process. I hope it's working.
Thank you.
This is a question about the role of the tribunal in securing, let's say, the future of Cambodia and the prevention of genocide. Your account of how Cambodians have been practicing reconciliation among themselves, let's say, for the last 30+ years is, I think, both very astute and eloquent, especially in its sensitivity to what we might call emotional intelligence. There is, I guess, a role that you actually mentioned in one of your answers before for the tribunal in the future about the rule of law as part of a process of justice that's independent of, let's say, individual persons and what happens to them either as victims or perpetrators. And in talking with people who are connected with the tribunal now, especially those working on the UN side, a big concern of theirs is about inculcating an understanding of the rule of law in Cambodia, and for that matter, internationally, in the case of how the world looks at this particular tribunal process, as a way of preventing genocide in the future. In other words, there's something outside of ourselves that we can turn to for justice and trust in some way. So I'm wondering if you have a sense, and this is, I suppose, somewhat beyond the purview of what DC Cam is doing now, but you are obviously very engaged with this process and may have something to say about it. In the tribunal actually working to produce for Cambodia a sense of the rule of law, and providing an example, for instance, for Americans who are, I think, wondering about their own government's respect for the rule of law on occasion, for example, in relation to Iraq and so forth. Do you have a sense of that being at all an issue for the ordinary Cambodian who's paying attention to the tribunal process? For instance, what happens if case 2 doesn't end up with conviction? As you said, they've already dealt with it personally. They know they're guilty, but there's still the problem of how it looks from the standpoint of the law.
There has been an outreach effort on this issue. I personally taking prosecutors around the country. Sometimes the judge also travel to explain, and there's an effort to also to explain. But I think that if I were the judge, if I were the court, I don't have to explain to anybody. That's what the court is all about. You don't have to explain, you know. This is the court that people have to understand. This is the court, is the judgment. I'm the judge and I decide. So, but I think that the court, I work with all units at the tribunal, and I think that it has been learning from each other, from Cambodian side to international side. The international side learn about Cambodian law practice, and the Cambodian side learn about international law practice. So that would be the legacy, would be something would contribute to improve the Cambodian judicial system of rule of law, as you may say. And you know, for example, the defense, it's a big lesson for Cambodian. I mean, usually we took justice out of our own hand because we don't trust the legal system. But now you have clearly people who commit crime, but yet being put in a very nice detention center, have medical care, can speak, everything. It's a big lesson for Cambodian to understand that all these things, they have to go through this proceeding. And I think that has been learning. You cannot say it now until the court is over. But I think that the court made all effort to educate the public, and all the process itself, which is now televised and accessible, it will contribute one way or the other. And we have recently proposed, we create a website that, we have 2 websites. One of our website posts everything on video, you know, it's called a postcard something. And that it's everything on the court right there. And we bring that to law school in Cambodia. So that become a seminar course for all law students, that when they become a lawyer, then they have this background. I think for the survivor, they don't care what you call genocide, crime against humanity. They don't even care what you call proceeding or pre-trial. The word justice in Khmer is too far away from the reality. Yutte, it's a Sanskrit Bali. When you go to other countryside people, they don't use the word justice in Khmer language. They use the word true. We don't use the word Yutte, it's for elite, for the judges. They use crime against humanity. Even I can have this pronounce. Imagine my mother who never went to school, they said killing people. You know, that's it, you know, people were killing each other. So I mean, and it's not their job to try to understand all these rules, all these things, all this rule of law, whatever you may put. But it's the job of lawyer or legal institution of law school of the government that also important that contribute to the future of the rule of law. So I would not force any survivor victim try to understand the appeal. You know, you translate the word appeal in Khmer, it's confusing. Appeal what? And is it important for the victim to know appeal is? You know, so I think that's it contributes to a specific institution of the country, but not necessarily for all. Everyone should not have to know this. My mother doesn't even know who's Youk Chhang is, but doesn't make her less a victim. You know, some of the Cambodian people don't know who's Kai Po or Sao Pum, but doesn't mean that they don't know the history. You know, ask all the American kids, how many all of them know their congressman's name, and how many have gone to vote, you know? So that, because they're normal kids, you know, if you have all Cambodians who worry about prison, about Khmer Rouge all the time, I kind of get worried myself, you know. So I think this, the court have doing, I must say that a very good job in terms of trying and knowing that this is their mission that should be left behind after the ECC is over, and that it's important enough.
Hi. This sort of follows up on what you were just mentioning about how the people feel about the charge of genocide or crimes against humanity. I was following the trials and noticed that until November, there wasn't actually a genocide charge. It was just crimes against humanity, crimes of war, and that the genocide charge that's being put forth is for crimes against the Cham and Vietnamese.
Yes.
I was wondering what the general reaction was in Cambodia to those two particular groups being the ones that were up for the genocide charge. Also within the communities of Vietnamese and Cham who are living there, how did they react, and what's their sense of visibility around it? And just to get a sense from you, also I'd read a few scholars that were contesting that the genocide charge would slow down the trial and delay it and do all these things. And I wanted to know what your feeling was about that the importance of the genocide charge in a legal standpoint, and whether or not you think that there's any way that they can't be charged for genocide given the evidence.
We work with the Islam, we work with all the mosques in the country. There's 396 Islam mosques across the country, and I work with Tuan and Hakams and Meituan, all the Islam group. I also work with the ethnic minority, the Hill tribes, the Vietnamese communities and other, because here I'm a minority. So I can understand the feeling being a minority. In Cambodia, genocide has been defined in two different meanings. One is historical meaning, one is legal meaning. And everyone embrace the historical meaning, because the word genocide, when you translate into Khmer language, is the closest one to what happened. You know, Puj for us is like a race. When you were in high school, if someone cursed your father or your last name, you got angry, you know. You cannot curse my father. It's a Puj, you know, and if you kill your father, you kill it, it's close to cutting the root, killing the race, in Khmer. So it's very close to what happened, so people embrace that and refer to the Khmer Rouge in a historical sense. That this genocide regime, it's not necessarily legal definition. Legal definition requires intent to destroy in whole, in part of the ethnic minority and religious group. And it's always difficult to prove the intent, because in your mind, you have to use all the activity, all material to show the intent of the leadership that targeted particular group, or in whole or in part, and then you can call it genocide. There is no reaction to this, because we all see themselves, the Cham, the Vietnamese, call it Khmer Rouge genocide anyway. And in 1995, when I first approached the government to set up a tribunal, people said, oh, that's genocide in Cambodia. I said, well, do you understand what does it mean? They said, no. So I brought a lawyer from ICTY for the first time in 1995 to give a seminar to all government officials on what is genocide mean. So when we began to discuss this with Yale Law School in 1996, it's a big debate. You know, why it's about the Cham, the Vietnamese, not we Khmer. We also ethnic group, but it's just a large number. But I think that after 30 years, after 20 years, 15 years of negotiation or debate, people sell, and it doesn't make any difference, the Cham or the Khmer. When I work with the Cham, people said, are you sure you also work with the Buddhists in the same way? Let me give you one example. Like, if you pay too much attention to the particular ethnic group, in fact, you even more prejudiced. For example, you write a report that 500 people visiting the court, that 40 male, 50 female, and then 3 Cham. You know, like you said, there's 100 people here, that 2 men, 5 women, 6 blonde and 2 black. See what I mean? But you actually have the good intent want to include them, but in fact, in such a way, it prejudice instead. So in Cambodia, people no reaction to this. The Cham and the Khmer have always lived in harmony for a long, long time. And for the Vietnamese, mostly people who've been filing the case, people who were born there, like in case of prevent mostly the intermarriage between the Vietnamese and the Khmer for hundreds of years in that particular village. And so for the one who the real Vietnamese who recently migrated to the country, there's no reaction to it. So there's no reaction whatsoever of the term genocide, but in fact we're happy by all sides because finally see genocide. We told you 30 years ago. So there's no division among the victims. This is where come to the civil party that they try to divide people by group, by gender, by status. People have seen as one for 30 years. People be aware that everyone was a victim. So there's no differences. So you cannot just divide them anymore in terms of being a victim as one, and they've been together for so long. So there's no real reaction to this at all. And I work very closely with the Cham community in the most remote area. We have also sister who are Cham themselves. So we work directly with the mosque, with the church, with the pagoda, and there's no reaction negatively or separately from other group about the child. No. Never heard of one so far, at least.
I wonder how survivor guilt, what role survivor guilt plays in this reckoning. It's such a complex thing, and I also wonder about the Buddhist mindset and how that might condition it.
Like,
so those who survived, who lost, who felt that they could have done something to prevent some of the harm among their families, and maybe that contributes to the general resistance you encountered when you began this in the 90s. Or I'm trying to think how it would apply to the perpetrators.
You mean like people who feel guilty?
Who feel guilty,
regret?
Who feel lots of guilt, yeah.
Guilt.
And how that inhibits the reckoning that you've been seeking since you began this.
I'll give you one story then to demonstrate your question. In where I live today, it's called Trapang Veng village. This village still have no TV today. This is about 450 kilometers from Phnom Penh city. This is full of victim and perpetrator. This is the place where in 1975 were controlled by the Northwest group, and then were replaced by the West, and then replaced by the Southwest. So they killed each other one way or the other. So they all taking turn. At first they were perpetrator, then become victims. So it's 3 generations of killing in that particular group, because the Southwest, the West, the Northwest, they kill each other, and also they kill the people like us. Recently, I built a road for them. It's called Reconciliation Road, because they have no road to walk to the right field. They always just walk across the pagoda. And one of the clergy, he used to be a village chief at that time. He didn't really harm me, but he felt guilty because he should have saved one of my uncle who escaped and later killed when they tried to crossing the border. So a lot of Cambodians do a lot of what we call the body languages. You know, he came, I invited him to come to see the court, and he's older than me, but he addressed me as a brother, big brother. He would asking me how is my sister, the one that he targeted to be executed, and she's still alive today. But the body language, you can see that people regret. If you go to a pagoda, he would clean the floor for you, carry your supply, and would greet you while he's older than you. So those, it's what people would deal with that. When people feel regret, it's through body languages in my culture. People don't say it. He doesn't come to me and say, I'm sorry that I did this to you. No. But through those languages, you communicate. And I didn't go to him and say, look, you know, you were so bad to me. I didn't say that. I basically accept by smiling and then by talking to him on something else, you know. So this is to demonstrate that people who feel guilty, and that's what they have done. Among the 10,000 killers that we interview, only 2 were drinking. The rest live in a normal life, no domestic violence, take good care of their own family, send their kid to school and never complain. Him Hoi have 9 children. He was so proud because one of his daughter wanted to study accounting, you know, and he told me proudly that, oh, one of my daughters study number, because they all were farmer. And he lived in a very poor life compared to other. He should have complained to other NGO about poverty, about land grabbing. He did nothing because of the guilt that he had in the past. So all this kind of living way of life, it's seeking forgiveness and showing regret to the neighbor, and he wants so much to be integrated to the society. So among all these killers that we interview, you will be surprised that they have no domestic violence, no beating of their wife, no child trafficking, no nothing. They take good care of their own family. And that is, it's showing the sign of guilt that they had in the past. One of the women, the Southwest Zone village chief who responsible for the death of more than 1,000 of the villages where I live, now live in the northern part of the country. And she is afraid to return home. All the Khmer Rouge who live in that part of the country is still afraid to come home because they still see themselves as the other side of the population. But she has 2 children study at Royal Phnom Penh University in Phnom Penh. She wants the child to be better educated and to do something good for the society. And the child have visited me, both those young boys. So Cambodian use a lot of body languages, which is very difficult for the Westerner to understand. You know, sometimes when you go there and you do the survey statistics scientifically, oh, people don't talk to each other, the children don't know the history. Cambodian people don't do that. You know, they go to the temple, they pray the Buddhists, they discipline the child, they curse or they slap their face, whatever. But how you learn in our culture? But Westerner would not understand. Say, why perpetrator live alongside for 30 years, nothing happened. But with all these body languages, they have been socially integrated. You know, when I go to the village of the perpetrator, they always run to open the door for me, say, please don't do that. But he wanted so much to open the door, you know. And he would give me a glass of water. It's a dirty water, you know, but still water, you know. He want to do something good. And I have nothing to do with that person, but because of the image. In Cambodia, when 2 people speak, it's okay. But when one side said they were former Khmer Rouge, there's a wall built quickly in between. Khmer Rouge become the symbolic of evil in our society. There's no word in Khmer language to replace that word Khmer Rouge. No word that to say and make the Khmer Rouge less evil. Not exist. This is black forever. And that is the problem too. So, you know, culture and religions are 2 important factors in any survivor to cope, and sometimes overlooked or misunderstood by the outsider and the Westerner especially. You might, all the white people go down there, expect the mother talk to the children right now. You talk to each other or not? People say, we don't talk to each other. Wow, what's wrong with you? I think what's wrong with you, the interviewer, because they have a way to communicate the history. And that sometimes we fail to understand, and that's the problem. And then that's what I told the court, your job to look the crime on the ground, do not bound by the analysis written too much. It's good sources to open the door, but now you're on the ground, go to talk to the victim, see prison, see the mass grave, and, you know, touch the handcuff, whatever, and feel it. You know, though not bound by this analysis, sometimes can be misleading. And culture is very important. I think no one understands human rights than the people of Cambodia because they have suffered so much. All of the 10 of thousands of people that I have interviewed, not all of them, but with my staff, none have asked for a compensation. But Cambodia is a poor country. If you go to a village saying that even if you don't feel well, it's a trauma team. If you not feel well, come to my meeting, I give you $1. The whole village will show up. Nothing to lose, you know, $1. They can just come and get $1. But none of them were traumatized by anything because they poor. So when come down to human rights, no one understands human rights than the people of Cambodia because they have lost so much, they suffer so much. And none have asked for any compensation for what they have lost because the life is so valued. They just want to see the photograph, they just want to see the handwriting, they just want to see the process. I think to say that Cambodia have a culture of violence is very wrong. They are the one who know more than anybody else in the whole world. And the young generation of Cambodia is the only one who know the story more than anybody else, because they have no choice right at home. No choice. They don't have to go to school to learn the history of the Khmer Rouge right at home. And they have to endure this for what happened in the past. And I don't want them to experience the way I have experienced it, because it's not their fault. They should be free to learn. They should be free to research, but they should not be forced to appreciate our suffering. They should not be forced to understand us who gone through genocide. That's so unfair to the young population. They should be free, go to the shopping mall, buy CD, whatever, you know. But we can only create this curriculum process for them to learn. You know, so that is so unfair when you're saying that young people don't know, you have to know, you have to learn. That's so unfair. I don't want to be forced like that, if I were them, you know.
Well, thank you very much, Youk. In closing, I just would, as you were speaking, I think it was Joseph Stalin who once said that the death of one man is murder and the death of a million is a statistic. I think part of the process of reconciliation is navigating that extraordinary gap between the horrific idea of genocide and, of course, its actuality in Cambodia, where an estimated 2.7 million died, and the actuality of individual human loss. And reconciliation needs mediators, and I think that what Youk Chhang has succeeded in doing, not yet in preventing genocide. It takes many, many people of the same mindset and skills to achieve that. But it's this mediation and translation, and a lot gets lost in translation, I think, in international law, in the rhetoric that you alluded to earlier, between that individual loss of your mother, Julie, perhaps those in your extended family and others, and the enormity of the crimes for which those are facing trial in Phnom Penh. I'd like you to join me all in thanking Youk